We now have a power-packed panel discussion on best companies for women in Gulf. The topic would be nurturing gender diversity in Gulf workplaces. As a panelist, we welcome Preeti Singh, Senior Vice President, People and Capability, Eastern Europe, Middle East, Africa, Mastercard. Preeti is a passionate people leader who has led business transformations and enabled service growth and efficiency solutions across different industries. At Mastercard since 2017, she joined Eastern Europe, Middle East, and African region in August 2022 to focus on achievement of business-wide strategic goals and performance through a comprehensive talent strategy touching all aspects of employee life cycle and organization design and development. It's a pleasure to have Murli Krishnan, Director of Human Resource and Compliance, Burn Group. Murli is an accomplished and talented professional with an extensive knowledge about principles, practices of human resources, performance management, and employee development. He has a proven ability to provide empowering team leadership, excellent analytical abilities, and an organizational development strategies to transform the organization into a positive employee relations culture. With over 2 decades of experience, he has worked in complex organizations effectively, collaborating with multiple division leaders and business partners to solve challenges and execute innovative solutions. And our third speaker is Brinda Sood, HR Director, Ecolab. She is leading the HR for the Middle East and Pakistan and supporting as HRBP for downstream and finance functions for more than 40 plus countries across India, the Middle East, Africa, Turkey, and Israel region. Vrinda has over 14 years of experience in holding leadership positions in HR across total rewards, mergers and acquisitions, talent management, HR digitization projects, and change management, and has held various global portfolios in the organization that are market leaders across diverse industries. The moderator for the panel discussion is Mr. Karthik Egambram, Executive Vice President and Director, DEI Solutions Avatar, a diversity and inclusion specialist who has completed several seminal projects successfully for various organizations. With experience in business analytics, talent strategy, and workforce diversity consulting, Karthik has devised flexible working policies and created diversity ready workplaces for several Fortune 500 organizations. Karthik has also co authored several papers that have been published in journals of national and international repute. He has been confirmed the Diversity Leadership Award by the World HR Congress. As this discussion happens, you can share your queries in the chat window. The panelists will answer them for you. Over to you, Karthik.
Thank you, Molly. Good evening. Thanks everyone for joining today as we launch the best companies for women in India study, women in Gulf study. We are so happy to have our esteemed panelists today, Preeti Singh from Mastercard, Murali Krishnan from Burn Group, and Vrinda Sood from Ecolabs. I'm assure everyone that it's going to be an exciting discussion. We have a good diversity amongst us with our speakers coming from different industries. Preeti from Mastercard in the financial services, I may say it's a fintech company as well. So I think that is going to be a good idea in terms of the diversity that is there in that particular sector. Brinda is into the entire range of sanitation and hygiene, and that's going to be another very important industry for us to really focus on, and specifically in Gulf, I think, right? There are lot more companies out there in that particular sector, and Murali Krishnan in the construction and engineering industry. I think we have a good mix of companies from these different industries having there, being here. I think we're going to get some very excellent insights. One from the Gulf as a region, in terms of overall diversity and inclusion. And our focus is primarily today on the aspect of gender and the advancement of women. But at the same time, we're also going to get, I think, some more little perspective on some of the challenges that different industries in Gulf face. And It is there across the geography, just not in the Gulf. So I think this is going to be a very interesting discussion. Once again, happy to welcome you all, Vrinda, Preeti, and Murali. And for us at Avtar, it's such a pleasure starting off this particular study in the Gulf. And it has a rich history. The best companies for women in India, women in the Gulf. And I keep repeating India. I'm sorry about that. The Gulf has a rich history, right? It's more than 35 years in the US. And today, this year, it's the eighth year of the study in India. And we are very confident of the fact that the study in the Gulf is as going to be as successful and as impactful as it has been in the US and in India. In the Gulf, we also feel that it's a great time for the study to be there. And you know, I studied, I did my school education in Dubai some 30 years back, long time back. And when I come here, I see a significant change, specific in the last 10, 15 years. There's been a significant change in terms of the entire workforce, in terms of diversity. There's a lot more conversation. Governments like the UAE and Saudi Arabia and various Gulf countries actually putting a lot of effort, not just in gender. We also heard a lot of focus with people with determination, right? And therefore, this is a great time for anyone really looking at diversity and inclusion. I think somebody also referred to the ESG. I think Dr. Soundarya spoke about the ESG, and I think that is again being very significantly focused on in the Gulf. And within that ESG, diversity is a very important factor of the S, right? And therefore, there is also a lot more focus with respect to diversity and inclusion. So it's a great time, I think, for us and for the region out there to really have a deeper look at diversity and inclusion with respect to the study perspective. The reason being, today, whatever that we talk about from a DI perspective, it is very important for us to really look at the progress that we are making through completely based on data, right? And that is going to be very critical focus for us in part of the best companies for women. It's actually a study based on data, not on perception. And data is going to be the driving force for the study. And therefore, we find that this is going to be very significant, specifically from an ESG perspective as well. With that, a little bit of a context, I'm just going to jump straight into the conversation with Preeti, Murali, and Vrinda. And I like to open it up with a question on how do you see diversity, equity, and inclusion in the Gulf as an opening question to all the three of you. And I would request Vrinda to give your opening remarks.
Thank you, Karthik, and thank you everyone for this beautiful opportunity. And what an insight it's been the first 45 minutes. It's been really eye opening, and we're really looking forward to partnering with what Avatar has to offer. Speaking about diversity, equity, and inclusion in DE&I specifically for us, Ecolab is a global leader in water hygiene and infection protection. And our success basically depends on our expertise, our customer centricity, and our ability to build diverse and inclusive teams. DE&I has been a strong proponent of our company's culture as well as our leadership behaviors. However, DE&I gained a renewed focus and rigor since about 2020 when we came up with a multi-year DE&I roadmap to bring about a cultural transformation. With this focus on building an inclusive culture, various themes under DE&I were identified, such as gender diversity, generational diversity, disability, LGBTQ, racial diversity, and so on and so forth. While gender diversity remains mandatory theme across the globe for us, we have the framework allows us to add more themes basis what the local relevance is and making it more relevant to us. In the Gulf, primarily, we are naturally diverse. You know, the multicultural essence to us. In Ecolab UAE, we have about 40 nationalities that work for us. And our focus here is to build a strong female gender diversity, not only across the board, but our focus is also on building that management level of female leadership pipeline. While delivering on the localization mandate, which is Emiratization mandate, Omanization mandate, and Saudization mandate. Moving ahead for the next couple of years, we are also planning to add generational as an additional theme under our GCC roadmap. This roadmap and a commitment to action in the last 3 years, we have seen a year-on-year diversity improvement on the female front, and we are hoping that the steady increase in the diversity front will continue in our leadership levels as well as we have seen so far. Thank you.
Thank you, Vrinda. I think you gave a very good summary in terms of the entire aspect of diversity which you spoke about. It's just not about gender. While today we are all talking about the best companies for women, and I think it also talks about the kind of maturity level that with respect to diversity that is there in the Gulf, in terms of the awareness of inclusion of gender, the generations, people with determination. I think there is also this aspect of ethnicity that is coming in multicultural environment. I think, Vrinda, I think you spoke about some 40 nationalities. I don't know how many nationalities that Preeti is going to say now. So, Preeti, over to you in terms of the DI at MasterCard and specifically in the Gulf region, Preeti.
Thank you, Karthik, and thank you, Avatar and Saramount, for inviting me to this session. I'm a big promoter of this study because in my role in India, where I was about a year plus ago, we did leverage the Avatar study, Avatar Saramount study, and also share learning about the best practices. So if you have not participated into the study or you've not raised your hands, please, I would highly encourage you to be participating in BCWG to get the industry benchmark and understand where you are on the journey to be a most diverse company. Now, to the topic that Karthik, you raised about what does gender diversity mean to you in the GCC operations, I've been a big proponent and a promoter of gender diversity. I believe that the world that works better for women actually creates limitless and priceless possibilities for all of us, including women. Is an integral part. Diversity and inclusion is not only right and decent thing to do, but it does make a business sense. And that's where there are a lot of organizations that are continuing to invest into this space. While Brinda spoke about the various aspects and dimensions of diversity, but I'm focusing more about women in my conversation just now. So at MasterCard, your specific question, gender diversity is extremely important. We're committed to leading the change in reshaping the way that the world is designed, coded, and constructed. Because we would like to really leverage our innovations, technology, because as you rightly said, we're a global fintech organization. We use technology and networks to open up possibilities that are for women and for everyone and everywhere. Our gender balance initiatives kind of fit into broader business critical commitments to diversity and inclusion to ensure that everybody has an equal opportunity to flourish and to grow. We as an organization have also come to realize that as an organization, while employees are an important aspect of it, but what is important for us to look at beyond the organization. So accordingly, our gender diversity focus is expanded to 3 pillars. One is around people, which is MasterCard employees. Very proud to say that 30+% of our board of directors globally are women. And within GCC, we are 47% are women. And how we have achieved it by ensuring that we create a work environment and the benefits, and also ensure that there is an equal pay for the same job done by men and women out of the people pillar. The second pillar is market. We do realize, and we like to acknowledge this, that 80% of household purchase decisions are controlled and influenced by women. And our products and interventions have to be designed to ensure that it is more market relevant. So we very continuously work with the industry, our peers, our competitors to see that whatever we're creating as a product portfolio and offerings to our customers and clients, it is much more women friendly as well. So that's the market pillar. The third pillar is society. So we do know that all women are not really equipped to come to an office for a job. There are many more who are kind of, and especially after COVID, they become entrepreneurs and they kind of setting up their so small and medium-sized enterprises. There are women-owned SMEs, small and medium-sized enterprises, which need credit across the region. So MasterCard has various forums where we kind of promote that into providing them the credit, working with them with the bank and everything else. So in summary, how do we define diversity, equity, and inclusion at MasterCard? Diversity is all the qualities that make us similar and different. None of us are same, therefore we all are diverse. Even on the call, we look so different, right? Equity is how we create equal opportunities for all by ensuring our systems create a level playing field for all. And inclusion is a leadership skill that we believe. And it's all about ensuring that we hire, sustain the diverse talent at MasterCard. So that's what I like to summarize saying this, Karthik.
Thank you, Preeti. I think you actually said it in terms of when you said limitless possibilities, and I think if you can actually crack the gender diversity issue with respect to having much more gender diversity in the workplace, I think it gives you limitless possibility to include any forms of diversity at the end of the day. And I think another one that of very interest, the expansion of diversity is no more within the four walls of the company, right? It's just not about your own employees. It is how the diversity can actually help you in terms of the market, your customers, and how customers can benefit out of your products. I think that's what
Yeah.
Mastercard does. It's not about the company benefiting from the diversity out there, but how can you serve your a diverse customer base with a better understanding of diversity within the organization, and therefore you're able to create customized product. I think that's again a limitless possibility for your business to actually grow, and it's a win-win for everyone. And I think the greater impact is the society. At the end of the day, all our employees and the customers are from the society, and I think you need to give it back. And I think you nicely summarized, Preeti, in terms of it's just not beyond the four walls, but diversity is actually it's all encompassing, right? The society and the market. Thanks a lot, Preeti. Murali, over to you. I think you are, I would say, like Brinda, you are an industry which is not as conducive as probably a fintech or a tech company or a financial services company when it comes to diversity and inclusion, right? So, over to you, Murali, in terms of your experience of diversity, equity, and inclusion in the Gulf and specifically in the construction engineering industry, Murali.
Right. Thanks very much. Actually, very interesting in terms of just participating in this webinar, because I think based on what Dr. Soundarya mentioned at the start itself, ESG is actually gaining a lot of prominence in the region. In the context of the global sense, COP28 conference happens in Abu Dhabi in November, December this year. As part of the ESG and climate change initiatives and everything else, because ESG, the S part of ESG, which is the social side of things, concerns the DEI initiatives. That is something which probably has been realized as a very critical priority in the region in the more recent years. I would certainly say that multinationals and organizations that have been global have been practicing it for many years. But this understanding DEI and even getting into these initiatives is a fairly recent phenomenon here. So to me, as you said rightly, I'm from the industrial sector, very similar to Brinda. And we basically, if I categorize companies which are into DEI in a big way into three specific levels, probably Preeti is already in the trend-setting level in terms of organizations that practice this globally for many years and regionally implemented as well. Probably, there are also these second-tier determined learners who actually go through understanding what it is, possibly going through, the midway through their journey in terms of how they would implement it. I possibly will categorize ourselves at the lowest level, which is the recent adopters, because we basically, as you said rightly, we are an industrial concern. We are basically into engineering, not so much into construction, but more into the oil and gas side of things. And this involves practically people working on rig sites and in potential locations in islands which are off Abu Dhabi and things like that, which is more of a male-dominated kind of a domain. However, having said that, there are still a lot of opportunities, and that is what we are trying to tap. And if I also, as I said, the geopolitical context is changing in terms of climate change and things that are more into the ESG side of things, that basically dovetails very well into what organizations can do in this region, especially the Gulf, which is a relatively, I would say, young region, because unlike the rest of the world, in the last 20 years, population has doubled. Economy has kind of taken a completely different turn for the better in terms of positive economic indicators, highly stable growth, oil prices aiding it. At the same time, the fossil fuel mining is basically putting pressure in terms of carbon footprint. So obviously, DEI initiatives as part of the ESG jigsaw is going to basically have a huge opportunity in this region. So that is what I would basically say. So I'm a recent adopter, and what we are trying to do is to ensure that succession within the organization, as well as ensuring that we make sure that a fair amount of gender diversity happens. This region is naturally, not naturally, endowed basically because of the various expat communities that are welcomed because of skill shortages. So diversity is not an issue really. It is the gender diversity that is the thing that is the main challenge. And I think that is where a lot of efforts are happening right now. So typically, I think I would want to see more women in leadership positions in the organization. At this time, it is more at the lower level or mid-level kind of thing. So this is what I would summarize as my take on the DEI piece.
Thank you. Well, you spoke about adopting to DEI recently, and industry per se is also in that kind of a starting point, and therefore there are the challenges out there, right, for you to really look at, and this is where the best company study that we do, we have there is a multitude of different kind of companies which participate in the study. There are companies which are very mature, there are companies which are just starting in the journey, and companies also, as I said, depending on the industry, are at a different maturity level. The study is a great point for all these companies to actually come together where they're able to share some of their best practices, and therefore the benchmarking, and it gives a tremendous opportunities for learn from each other. And I think that is something the philosophy of the study. So anybody who feels that we're just starting it off, and I just thought I will touch upon this point because some of them feel that I'm not done enough. Should I be taking part in the study, right? The study is not just about being recognized as the top 10 company or the 100 best company, but ultimate philosophy of the study is
Karthik, we
to
lost
ensure.
you there. I think we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yes, I
Yeah.
can hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So thanks, Murli, for bringing it up. So the point I was making is just not about where you are in the journey of diversity. Wherever you are, I think it is important to be part of such a study where it gives access to the kind of data where you are with respect to the maturity. You're able to then benchmark, learn from each other. I think that is going to be the fundamental philosophy of the study, because people feel that I should have done something to be part of the study. It's not about recognition, it is about learning, sharing, and therefore you're able to come up with your own unique path to actually sort of reaching your goals, Murli. So I would urge, Murli, if you have some thoughts on it, I'm sure you're going to be part of the study. This is the right time to be part of the best companies for women in Gulf. Murli, another thing that I really wanted to sort of ask you the next question. You spoke about the diversity that is there, and we are talking about Gulf as a region, and it's a composition of about 6 countries, right? And in that composition, you're having different countries having their own nuances, Murli. So when you're actually managing the HR and people and heading and also taking care of the diversity, how do you manage that diversity within this 6 countries in the Gulf, Murli?
Right. I think typically what happens is we look at the diversity element in 2 dimensions, and I'm sure my fellow panelists will also agree with me. One is the localization element, which is basically bringing in the local workforce and the local skilled manpower into the teams. And we have the diversity piece in which we basically have gender diversity in terms of bringing in women to the team. So invariably, what happens is these countries, the GCC countries, are very unique in the sense that each country has its own demographics in terms of availability of people, of different nationalities, as well as in terms of the gender, in terms of availability and ready to work in terms of a scenario like this. There are also preferences in terms of a lot of people wanting to work in the government or the banking, finance, and the insurance sector, which is more of a very stable kind of sector where they would like, they prefer to have a kind of a career progression in that particular sector. However, having looked at some of there's a World Bank report which I saw recently, which said that the despite the numbers of women being low, because a lot of expats also have families back home. They don't necessarily sponsor their family here. This element of engaging and employing the women workforce in some of these markets has actually changed a lot over the last few years. From 2000 and 2001 until now, what I understand is that Qatar employs more than 60% of the available women workforce in the country, followed by UAE, which employs about 50% of the workforce. And Saudi Arabia employs about 37% of the workforce. So invariably, but the surprising thing here is Saudi leads the way in terms of the base growth. So from 2001 until 2022, we've had a 141% increase in employment of women compared to 54% in UAE and about 33% in Qatar. So what is happening is where there have been a lot of women employed in the past by some of these countries, and I don't have statistics on the other countries right now, but I was just going to say that, the improvement in terms of the open-mindedness, in terms of the DEI, in terms of governance coming through in the GCC countries is dramatically changing. And right now we are at a kind of a situation where it looks to be a nice spike. The regulations and the government framework is very supportive of employing women, as well as in terms of bringing in diversity initiatives. So therefore, I think it is a situation where we tend to kind of follow, to specifically answer the question, regional or the country-specific norms in terms of how many we can employ, be it in terms of gender diversity or in terms of making sure that localization piece is also sorted out. And it is a challenge at this point of time. Typically in Saudi Arabia, most companies that are engaged in operating there have about 25% to 30% of the local manpower, of which I would say about 30% would be the women manpower and the 70%. So there's still a domination of men over women in Saudi Arabia, for example. Whereas, in the UAE, it is possibly a bit more of women from the expat manpower in positions in the office primarily. And anything that is a site-related job is typically dominated by men. But there are certain sectors where I think, as I said, banking, finance, insurance, and things like that, where there's a huge amount of, and retail, of course, where there are a lot of women that are employed as such. So we follow different approaches in the different markets. And obviously, we go by supply and demand as well, to make sure that we are able to kind of satisfy that particular requirement. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, thank you. I think, Murli, you gave a whole lot of insights in terms of very interesting data, specific percentages, and I think it was really useful, Murli. And one point that you said, wherever there has been this a greater gender diversity mix, right? And I think there is a positive sort of a culture that is emerging through that, and I think which is very positive. And that is something that we all know that it can actually happen. And so I think thanks for those very interesting insights. Brinda, do you experience that kind of, you handle so many countries, Brinda, I think close to 40 countries that you handle, that you manage, right? Brinda, how do you see this in terms of specifically with Gulf, within the 7 countries? Do you see a similar kind of an opportunity as well as a challenge? I think there is a lot of focus. Every country in the Gulf is actually really sort of looking at gender diversity as a key focus. For example, the UAE, they have launched this Women Business Council, a council which is basically looking at from a gender point of view, right? So, Rida, what is your experience in the different countries in the Gulf? You're on mute, Mirinda. Can you unmute?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you can.
Okay, yeah, sorry. So I was saying that I resonate with Murli, what Murli just said. I think for us, we have managed to build and attract early talent as a stepping stone into, actually, I would say hitting 3 birds with 1 stone, especially in Gulf, where we not only try to attract local talent, especially in Saudi, we have this a very big success story in what we call as Nalco Saudi University, where we bring in engineers, and we are actually using these engineers to, these are all local talents, so basically Saudi nationals. We are using it as a breeding ground to train these engineers into our ways of working, like basically building capability for the future. So building local talent, building capability for the future, and also more recently, since the last 1 year, started to bring in females also as a part of this. So as I said, hitting three birds with one stone. So this is working out really well for us. In UAE, what has worked well for us, similarly on the Emiratization, we are trying to club both the gender diversity as well as the localization mandate here. So again, in the Emiratization front, we face challenges in terms of availability of talent. That's common for all of us, I think. In terms of the kind of roles we keep looking for, we are not naturally, we are not a very recognized brand. Like we are not a B2C brand, which people naturally identify with. So we have to make an extra effort in educating. But when we educate and tell a story, it becomes a very compelling story for people to join in. So in UAE, when we have managed to bring in Emirati talent, I've been pleasantly surprised that the proportion of female versus male CVs and the interest that we get is completely like 90% female CVs, local talent versus 10% females, male CVs. And that also resonates in the kind of talent hiring we have done. We have in the Emiratization campaign that we ran this year, 100% of our hiring has been female hiring. So it is, so that's how we are also using Emiratization, localization as, not only building talent pipeline and delivering on a local mandate, but also making sure that we deliver on the female diversity campaign. One thing that we do very well is also not just building numbers for the sake of it, that we are, in UAE, we are say 25% diverse. We just don't report that. We also cut it down at overall diversity versus leadership diversity. And the moment we start seeing some level of decrease, and it was like this year, for example, if I say specifics, this year we did not decrease our female diversity. We just ended up hiring up a few more men. And what happened was there was, say, a 0.2% decrease in our overall leadership level diversity. And suddenly the amount of course correction that happened, the amount of presentations, the amount of action planning that needed to take, all the future recruitments, we had to plan it out that, okay, on this role, we will only bring in females. So we hold ourselves, our leaders, as well as the managers, we are collectively accountable to deliver onto a number. So, and all those targets that we set, we make sure that they are relevant. So in Saudi, when we set a target, we make sure it makes sense for Saudi. We will not give them 50% diversity talent for an industrial business, but maybe for the functions, we will set a very high target. So that's where we end up balancing as well.
Yeah.
Karthik,
Yeah.
I think it's important for us when you're looking at hiring across GCC to really have a very specific strategy. And the strategy should be really, as Murli and Brenda rightly said, you need to really identify where are your investments on early career talent. So we know that there are certain skills that are not readily available in the market. So we invest in early career talent, we invest in them, we nurture them, upskill them, and then put them into the job. Then there's the mid-career talent, which we look at men and women both to see that if they've been on career break, we have a lot of population which is of course the local national, but from a hiring perspective, so the gender overall, so we look at a lot of this particular region also has a lot of expatriates who have trailing spouses, and where there are a lot of women who've taken a career break. This may not be just the national talent, but we do have a specific segment for the mid-career and senior talent as well. The last piece that I'd like to make a comment additionally, that is that what we kind of have realized in the journey is, and there are targets that are, so UAE, as my fellow panelist said, has a Emiratization target. Saudi also has a target. So what we kind of have developed, one is this statutory requirement by the respective governments, but we also believe for us to really, what gets measured gets done. So we do have a strong governance, a body that kind of reviews our diversity updates, sees that what is, and it's been reviewed at a different level of leadership, right up till Mastercard's board of directors, to see that where we are really doing well and where we need a lot more focus. So it is the diversity, whether it's the women talent or it is the national talent, it's just not the responsibility of the HR function, so to say, because we are the panelists on the call here are more HR professionals, but it's as I said, it's a business prerogative. It's a business leader's responsibility to build that diverse talent. So the responsibility to create that diverse workplace and diverse talent is sitting with the CEOs or business leaders and across the board. And what gets reported gets done is the only other 2 points that I like to add.
Absolutely. And Preeti, I think that's the again the fundamental philosophy of the best companies for women study, right? What gets tracked gets done, what gets reported gets done as well, and that's the kind of an approach, the intent that we really want to drive through the study, right? The more you start off looking at data, the more you start off putting metrics in place, tracking them, and also most important, you're able to benchmark. This is not about your own progress, but benchmarking your progress with your peer companies, right? The other companies within the industry, outside of your industry, and therefore there is this much more focus, and it also really helps the leadership team to really take those calls. Ultimately, you are not also talking on perceptions, right? This is somebody's doing, and this is what that we want to get to. You are able to actually sort of say this is what is happening in the industry, this is where the industry is, and this is where we are, and how do we really reach there. And I think it really helps the leadership team take those calls. Preeti, you spoke about this entire aspect of diversity. Different countries have to really look at those local nuances, right? Another question that I really wanted to ask within that, even if you take, say, for example, UAE as a country, right? Preeti, I think in our conversation, I understand you have more than some 80 nationalities
That's
within
correct.
the organization, right? So even if you look at women as a cohort, as an area, but there is this huge amount of diversity there within that, the intersectional aspect of, the ethnicity and different countries coming together. So how do you manage that from a diversity and more specifically from an inclusion perspective, Preeti? That diversity
Yes.
with
Thank
respect
you.
to culture. Yeah.
Thank you, Karthik, for asking this. So you're right, we've got 60 plus nationalities with us working across different geographies, and every culture is very different. And specifically when it comes to women, we have to really have, uh, whatever is our culture is. So what we kind of said will define what our MasterCard very fundamentals that we'd like to have. Our ex global CEO coined the word decency coefficient, and that's the underpinning point for all of us, that decency and inclusion are the two things that we'll have to respect for everyone. Now,
Mm.
talking specifically when it comes to different nationalities, different culture, and more specifically about the women talent, how um, they feel much more empowered. I'm coming from Asia, right? Where and I've managed organizations like Japan and China where people wait for their time to come to speak. And there are nationalities or their cultures where they're much more aggressive and they're much more open to talking about what is top of their mind. So what we kind of have come together is to we did form a team and a project team that really understand what we would while we'd like to be respectful to all the nationalities that come and work for MasterCard in GCC as a region, but we kind of like to also see what MasterCard culture is all about. That we would like to embrace everyone while keeping all of their respective nuances together. So what we said was we are calling our MasterCard culture as MasterCard Way, and it consists of three principles basically to address what we're doing as an organization. So if we have the clarity that where are we going as an organization, what are we doing as an organization, how we will work together. So fundamentals about how we will come and collaborate and work together. And the third thing that we kind of wanted to clarify was amongst ourselves before we went to the wider team was how we would deliver for our customers and most importantly to each other as an organization, to as colleagues in the company. So, and what are those 3 to 4 things that we'd like to do together? Underpinning, as I said, the decency coefficient, the respect, and being inclusive to each other. And we said, we kind of came up with a framework which has got 3 principles and 3 habits. 3 principles are create value, grow together, move fast. And these can be good for men and women both, but these are also creating a lot of space for everyone. So first of them, underneath the create value is talking about think bold and big and bold, where a lot of women kind of hold themselves back when they are sitting onto a leadership team meetings or they're part of various large forums. They will hesitate, where their men counterpart will just say what they that comes to your mind. So we do encourage as part of this habit our women employees to think bold and then think, speak their mind, innovate with the intention. A lot of innovative ideas are there with the women colleagues, but then they don't do it. So we run specific innovation programs that are led by women leaders, and the participants are leaders to really innovate and come up with the product and the strategy for us as companies. So grow together. That's the second one. A lot of times we kind of don't bring different perspective, and that's where our what we encourage our women leaders are to bring different perspective. Move fast is learn and pivot. So a lot of times there are men and women both, and this third piece is more about men and women both, that we make mistakes and then we kind of keep it to ourselves, and don't really, if we've made one mistake, we'll feel always fearful of never opening our views, sharing our perspectives and everything else. So we kind of have come up with a culture of learn and pivot, where we do share in each of the meetings that we have. We'll talk about success, two success stories, and one or two failures as well, so that everybody feels to share, that they kind of have a opportunity to share. What we're doing, this is all part of the culture, but we also believe that it has to be a very safe environment for our women colleagues to express themselves. So we've created business resource groups, which is led by a woman leader and has cross-functional women coming together to talk about the kind of come and share, learn from each other, share each other, the best practices. And in that forum, they're also about putting up their soft skills, their professional skills. What are the areas that need to come together? And if they have challenges, they can talk about it. So what we kind of have, in a nutshell, what we've done together is we manage multiple cultures to amalgamate, include them all to the MasterCard culture, being respectful to everyone. And then we define something which is overall overarching for the organization, that everybody will have to stick to, and everybody will have to be inclusive, and everybody will have to be supportive to each other's ideas, respect each other. That's what we're kind of doing at this moment in the GCC countries.
Thank you, Preeti. Thank you, Preeti. I think you gave a nice framework in terms of how do you handle this, the diversity out there. I think, and I think it's a fundamental foundation is the respect and decency. How do we value each other? I think that's the fundamental principle on which you sort of build your entire DA practice and the culture. Preeti, thanks a lot for that sort of a framework that you gave. In fact, I just saw a very interesting question, Brinda, and I thought I'll ask you that question, right? And this is also could be linked to the question that I asked Preeti, right? Which is you have again an amalgamation of people coming from different countries. So there's this question: what are your perspectives about women's ambitions in Gulf? So one, it could be overall as women ambition in Gulf, but I think within that you also have this rich diversity out there. Right? You have Asians and people from Europe, right, and from Africa, and the people from Middle East itself, Brenda. So your perspectives and how do you see this?
It's hard to give one sentence on ambitions on females, because for everyone their own trajectory and growth and aspirations, their own personal story and what they expect from the business may be very different. However, the overarching theme is always that they always look for support in terms of career development, and if they are and ensuring that the policies and practices of the company are able to support them both from a work perspective, and if they have certain personal situations to take care of, the policies are actually supporting them. So for us, we make sure that when it comes to our policies and practices, they are as friendly as possible when it comes to being family friendly, not just female friendly. We make sure that our maternity benefits are higher than the market, our paternity benefits are higher than the market. I understand a lot of people on the call may resonate that compared to India, where we have a fairly good and robust maternity paternity benefits, Gulf is kind of lagging a bit over there. So females also find it a little hard that because they are here, they are not permanently based here, they're here for a job somewhere. Does taking a maternity break kind of take them off that leadership trajectory? So I think those are certain fears that people end up having, and as companies, we need to make sure that there is a conducive environment, the policies and the practices and frameworks are supporting females in their journey. What we also do very well in terms of some of this is our other insurance benefits. Some of these more hygiene aspects are well above the market, so that it becomes that females feel protected, that they will be taken care of if they have to take any kind of maternity break, or we also provide, even for men, we provide something called as family leave day, where they have like X number of days where they can just take up, as parents, you have parent teacher meetings to go to. You have in Gulf, you have to run for visa appointments sometimes with the government and this and that. And we want to allow them that flexibility, that you do not have to take away days from your annual leave days, to make sure that that leave days are meant for their overall well-being and being able to disconnect, whereas giving them some additional leave days to manage these additional responsibilities. And then when it comes to even when you talk about the female aspirations, we have made sure that that leadership focus remains there, so that commitment, that sponsorship is there. So whenever we do our talent calibration, or the 9-box calibration, which we may as HR professionals be very familiar with, we always, these are just semantics. Now we always highlight the female hypos, or in the 9-box we will always bold out the females, so that any leader who's looking at that 9-box, they end up seeing the female. If it's a hypo, they will definitely talk about the female candidate. So if there are 10 people in my hypos and there's one female, I will definitely make sure that my leader is talking about that candidate. So these are conscious and unconscious ways of making sure that you're always keeping diversity front and center. I was hearing Preeti talk about, bias, somewhere those biases, because people come from different nationalities. I think one thing we do, and I think my fellow panelists would agree, is there's been a conscious training on microaggressions as well as unconscious biases, because we are so diverse with 40 plus nationalities and with so many countries. We come with our own baggage, of our experiences, and how they would assess a female versus a male, a female who is unmarried at 40 versus a female who's married with 3 kids at 40. They all get assessed variously depending on our unconscious biases. So we try to educate and build that awareness, how to keep this away, to ensure that when you're assessing a female or when you're assessing a man, you are actually assessing them for their true worth, and not basing it on any kind of biases. Yeah.
Yep. Vrinda, I think you spoke about a very interesting aspect, which is there has to be a lot of sensitization that is required. One, because to understand the diversity out there, I think there's a lot more sensitization training that is actually required, right, to ensure that there's not such biases that are there in the system, right? Whether you do your appraisals or any kind of a rating or promotion, or even sort of working with them and assigning projects, right? So it becomes very important. And another important point that you spoke about, right, that in the 9-box that you spoke about, highlighting the IPOs, so the leaders make a note of it and really sort of talk to them, work with them. And Murli, this is where I really want to bring you, as the diversity in this group in terms of the speakers, right, Murli, how do you see this entire aspect of male allyship, men being advocates of gender diversity in the Gulf, Murli, and how leaders, and what is your take on how leaders can actually sort of, and specifically male leaders, right? And that's where you find a lot of men out there in the leadership positions. But your take on male ally and men as gender advocates, Murli.
Well, just before answering that question, I just want to kind of go back to the previous question that one of the participants asked about the ambition of women in the Gulf. And Vrinda did focus on the micro aspects for an organization to really manage. But from a macro perspective, I think if I just slice it, typically what happens is there's a lot of difference in the GCC countries in terms of the availability of skills. Also, there's a lot of preference in terms of where women want to be employed, what sectors and things like that. They don't want to take up any job. It needs to be something which is more focused and which kind of suits their career ladder, for example. And also the economic compulsions. So you have certain times when people just want to work, pick up anything that comes their way. And there are times when people want to really take up something and then continue in the long term. Obviously, visa regime and other things for expats is a different thing. Whereas I've seen a lot of government organizations really ensuring that the women workforce that they have employed and trained go up to the high positions, which basically means that the glass ceiling has been broken and a lot of women really achieve a lot in this market. You can see examples literally every day in some of the key positions that the government basically has. So that's a great thing to see. Now, from a and from a company point of view, and touching on what Brinda also mentioned, is that there's a lot of companies where there's a lack of mentorship and sponsorship within the workplace. So if that is not there, and that is where I think it is important for us to take the ownership as HR leaders. Typically, as a male HR leader, I would want to see a diverse workforce, and that is part of my vision, and that is part of what I have actually agreed with my board, that this is what we want to proceed with. Obviously, this is something which is not a very general kind of a line that anybody would take. There is a lot of difference in terms of the perspectives, the people, the owners, the boards. And I think this is where I think the government organizations are doing a great job in ensuring that there are quotas fixed for organizations to have a minimum of 20% representation on the board, for example. Whereas in a private organization, there is nothing regulatory that kind of pushes people into taking these initiatives. So therefore, it is more self-driven or more driven by the HR leader that is sitting there in coordination with the board. So this is where I think there is still a lot of I would say gap in terms of where we would ideally like to go compared to where we are right now. Also, I think typically with women, it's been 20 years. This market has kind of grown, so there's now a lot of opportunity. Career development opportunities, training opportunities are fairly limited unless it's a multinational organization. So that is one thing that needs to be focused on. Also, there is not much support for work-life balance. Of late, in February 2023, the UAE labor law changed, where, for example, maternity benefits increased fairly substantially. And I think this is a process where I think there's a great roadmap in terms of how things are changing. As Brinda touched upon, things like paternity benefits are coming in. A lot of other things that companies individually have realized that they need to take a lead and go ahead to ensure that these things happen are therefore very, very critical. So I think the HR leadership or the HR forum, or the HR fraternity needs to basically get together to make sure that these initiatives are given much more impetus within an organization, and that there is a very, very clear timeline, roadmap, or at least some kind of a plan where they move on to a certain path, which basically takes them to that point, say in 3 years or 5 years' time. But I think that self-drive and that motivation to kind of do these things at this point of time is a bit, I would say, difficult to define and difficult to kind of really estimate. And that is where I think a study that Avtar can do would basically open up this particular aspect dramatically, because everybody would start benchmarking, because there's always an element of constructive competition and people looking at healthy competition and saying, I'm better than this company and I'm better than that company. So when it comes to ratings and where things get measured, I think there's a huge amount of opportunity for organizations to jump into that bandwagon and try improving their metrics relating to DEI.
Thank you, Murli. In fact, you mentioned about how this really needs to be a leadership driven, and one question that sort of came to me, and I'm going to ask to Preeti and Brinda as well. You spoke about this entire aspect of the HR driving it, right? And in fact, I wanted to ask you, Murli, how do you really make it the leadership sort of focus, and how do you get men involved, right? And I'm just going to open this to Brinda and Preeti and Murli. You can also share your thoughts. So how do you make it the leadership prerogative with priority, right, in terms of the business leaders, just no more the HR leaders priority, but at the same time, but how do you also the HR leaders actively playing, either through, I think Murli spoke about the mentoring and sponsorship. How do you get them involved? Vrinda, Preeti, if you could share some insights, and Murli,
I just wanted to jump in and say that replace all male HR leaders with female HR leaders.
Great one. So I'll just answer it on two aspects. So the first thing that we have done here, we created as a part of our roadmap, we created what we call as country diversity councils and DE&I champions. We ensured one thing, that it did not have HR in it, or at least had minimal HR presence in it. Reason, we wanted it to make it, as we said, a joint responsibility and not an HR accountability. Because very naturally, with the moment you're talking about DE&I, it becomes an HR agenda, right? And we wanted to take that away. That's why we passed on the accountability as a shared responsibility across all leaders. So if we're talking about GCC, we would have like a MENA cluster leader here, along with a DE&I or an inclusion champion, as we would call them, who would not be from HR, and they could be from any function, any division, could be a male, could be a female, doesn't matter, but it has both male and female representation to it. So that is one way. And they are the ones who would come up with the plan, of what makes sense from a diversity, female diversity. How are they going to drive it? They are the one who are going to track the, how are they tracking on it? And then when it comes to the HR involvement, HR is overall the custodian in terms of reporting it out, making sure that, whenever the report outs are happening, seeking the, picking up the trends, holding people accountable, making sure that the balls are not getting dropped. And we are all laser focused on our 2030 goals that we have on DE&I. The second piece of involving making it a more inclusive piece rather than just an HR topic has been through our ERGs, which are employee resource groups. We have many resource groups depending on which part of the world you may be in. In Gulf, we have primarily what we call as E3, which focuses on female empowerment. It has, again, both male and female leaders who are, who are the core committee members, and wider teams who are supporting. And the whole idea is providing that ecosystem of associates from within the company, supporting each other, whether it's returning mothers or coaching on financial well-being, mental well-being, health, all of that. So, and just empowering women sometimes even on what kind of financial education, some things. So the team just keeps doing a lot of these initiatives, and it is, again, not limited to HR. I hardly see HR presence in these things, but it is about making sure as an HR, we are setting the stage, we are giving them the toolkit, we're making sure that everything that they need to have, they have it, but then they run the show. That's how we've managed to pass the ball over there.
Yeah, I think, Preeti, what you said is you set it up and you step back, right? And it's for the users to actually take over and do that.
That's true.
Preeti, maybe you want to share from a master class?
Yeah, I'll just add to what Murli and Brinda just said. So I can't agree more that this is a agenda of our business leaders. It has to be driven because diversity, as I said, it's a business imperative. It is not something that is good to have, but it helps the business to thrive, and grow in any market for that matter. What we do differently, what I'd like to just add and not repeat what has been already said. So we do have 3 levels of programs. So I agree there are different bodies that kind of come together to really help the women employees to come and flourish. But then what is also, we put together an ally program. So allyship program, we do have men who are the allies to our women. And we also realize that it is not that one size that fits all. And I spoke briefly about the career stages of women and the different needs at their career stage, right? An early career talent is much more ambitious, wants to achieve, good, very nice. But there's a mid-career woman as well who has her caregiving responsibilities. And she may want to have a different kind of mentorship. So one is men as allies, but was also as executive sponsorship and mentorship. So, at that mid-career stage, how she's able to manage and prioritize her personal and professional needs and everything else. So there are different programs that are run across the organization, but what as a man leader or a woman leader can offer as an advice and a coaching and a guidance for this woman colleague in the organization to sustain that period of time where she has the career giving responsibilities kind of helps us drive that as an agenda. So as a build to what was already said, that the frameworks are important. Everybody has to come together to really help women thrive, grow, be successful in the organization. But the allyship and the sponsorship of men in the organization is equally important as it is for our women leaders to be part of the journey to ensure that there is a 50-50. In fact, we're looking at, in the EMEA region, we are at 47% of women. We're looking at 50-50. That like to see that more women in the organization and working together, shoulder to shoulder, delivering to the business results. And we will be super proud to achieve that number very soon.
Thank you. I think it's on a very positive note, and we are really coming very close to the end of the session, Preeti. And I'm going to have this last question to all of you, right? So we are talking about the best companies for women in Gulf. And as we said, this is completely data-driven, metrics, KPIs, what companies are doing there. And it's all about, whatever that you do, that you say that you do, has to reflect at the ground, right? At the end of the day, it has to reflect in numbers. Whatever the numbers that you talk about, it could be the representation of women across all levels, right from the early career to the leadership positions. It could be the kind of people leading P&L roles, right? Just not in the support roles, right? Having that healthy mix of diversity across, right? It has to be there. And that's where you can say that your inclusion is actually working, that your DI goals are working. So, Vrinda, your thoughts on how do you think the best companies study for women can actually help an organization? Your thoughts on it, Vrinda.
Sure. So I
And
think it
your
was said
any
earlier.
suggestions and any suggestions you would like to offer for the study to really sort of focus on, Vrinda, from your
Sure,
experience?
sure. So I would say that as it was said earlier, that if you can't manage, you cannot measure. You have to have some level of calibration to see how you're progressing. We have, as I said, when we look at our target setting for DE&I, I think we are not in the nascent state. We are at a fairly good place when it comes to how we are managing a DE&I. We look at a DE&I, I would say, in probably three buckets. One is at a geography level, how we are doing, and we can cut geographies at different levels, whether it's a country, region, international, whatever. So one is at a geography level, one is at a business unit or a functional level. So that's the vertical piece of it. And the third piece we look at is basically when we look at gender diversity is at the level, whether it's overall female diversity, how we are, and as I said, at a leadership level, how we are tracking. So these are definitely the core KPIs that we are measuring and holding ourselves accountable to. And we have, also because we know how well, we believe that our processes and our practices have been good. We have also benchmarked so far ourselves with external companies, to see how our DE&I performance and progress has been with respect to the market globally and locally. And in GCC, we have been awarded the top employer certificate. And in that, if we look at our diversity metrics, it's far, it's in best in class, when we look at our practices. And I still believe, the benchmarking study that you are doing, given your experience, 27 years, I'm looking forward to 400 questions, and I'm going to see, I'm looking forward to learning how you adapted to this region. There's a lot of local nuance to it. And as fellow participants said, we cannot use a one size fits all approach. When you adapted US questionnaire to India, there was some changes made. I'm hoping to see some of that coming through, and we will like to see the depth of questions for sure. I'm sure 400 is a lot, so we'll see how we can optimize that. But when we look at the benchmarking, it's not only to assess how good we might like to believe that our strength, whatever our initiatives are, they're very strong, but it also helps us learn the best practices, irrespective of whether you make yourself into the top 100, doesn't matter. But there's always opportunity to learn. In the last 1 hour, I've learned so much from my two fellow participants in terms of the initiatives they are doing, and I was taking a mental note of what I'm going to take away from here, and I'm sure that the benchmark is going to give us some of that. It also becomes a part of our compelling employer brand proposition, and I think Murli will resonate with us that not being a naturally identifiable brand, these kind of certificates help us attract and retain talent, because we become an employer of choice as a diversity friendly organization. And obviously, if we are diverse, we also end up supporting on delivering our business goals. Primarily, if a lot of these companies, especially the government companies in Saudi, if you're not delivering on a particular diverse mandate for them, it's more on the localization mandate, we are not able to do business with them. It's clear as that. If you're not delivering and emiratization, there are fines, and again, our business ability to do business over here gets impacted. So this is serious, and hence we need to be able to commit. And if we show these certificates, we show this that we have delivered on it. It adds a star on our shoulder, which helps us attract and retain some of the most diverse talent in the market. So I'm looking forward to this study, and we'll definitely talk soon on this one.
Yeah, Vrinda, and I'll just let out a secret, right? So we may not have the 400 questions. We thought we'll be a little more considerate to the Gulf region since you're just starting it off. So it may not be as many as 400, Vrinda, right?
That's good to
So
know.
yeah, Murli, over to you. Your thoughts on the study and how do you think it could probably add value to whatever that you are doing, Murli, to all that
Right.
you're. Yeah.
Okay. So my previous comment was on the lighter vein, but nevertheless, what I feel is that sponsorship within companies is critical for DEI. And that is where I think there's a lot of initiative that is required by the HR fraternity However, what I would like to say is that, it sets up a benchmark. At this point of time, we are starting from a base which is uh, quite barren. We don't have any study that is a detailed study that has been done. Whatever has been done is based on necessity for potential reporting for certain forums or whatever it is. However, there has been nothing which is a clear on the ground report. While I do understand that you're not going to have all the companies joining in the very first study, I think this is going to be a movement which, if you look at a 10-year horizon, potentially by then you will have enough data where you will basically be able to kind of plot companies that are going through a certain cycle in terms of how they implement the DEI initiatives. And I think that is what is going to make a big difference to the Middle East with the growing population and economic capability and the power within the region. I think it's going to make a huge difference. And while there is a lot of government support and sponsorship, I think the individual company sponsorship level needs to certainly increase. And that is where I think this report can open a lot of eyes, can literally go around, get circulated to various people and make a big difference.
Thank you, Murli. Yeah, Murli, I think you said what I wanted to say. We want to create that movement, right? And that is very important. That is something that it has happened in US and in India. I think Dr. Rajesh Soundarya spoke about this entire aspect of, when we launched the study in 2016, we had 25% women representation, right? And in the last 7 years, we've actually moved to 35%, the 100 days companies. So that's the kind of an impact that we would love to have in the Gulf as well. And Preeti, I reserved this last question for you. So I am not going to ask you, how do you think it will impact you? If you could share your perspective, how did it impact you at MasterCard India? That'll be a good learning for all of us here, Preeti.
Yeah, absolutely. We first participated into the BCWI study in 2017. And certainly our numbers of diversity was in low 20s. And then we kind of participated, shared our best practices. Where we felt we were the best practices. But honestly, when the report came out, and as rightly Anju said, that this was an alphabetical order. So there's no particular ranking. So if you go to other benchmarking forums, they'll put yours top 10, top 50, 200, and everything else. But it was an equal celebration of every participant. So it gives you some comfort that you're in this safe zone. But at the same time, what I learned was like immense value in terms of the study that came out from what are the other companies doing as best practices. And some of these are really low-hanging fruits that we could really bring it to your respective organization. So we started shamelessly copying some of the best practices from other companies to bring in the best work culture, the work environment, support to our women colleagues to continuously work for the organization rather than taking a career break or resign. Because when I joined in 2017, our challenge was that we had a very leaky pipeline. We were hiring many women, but they would leave us because there was something that was not going wrong, something was going wrong here that we were not able to identify. So these were like people, and as I said, that caregiving, that's a real big stage in a career of a woman. And we had to come up with various measures to really do that. And one of the interventions that we came up in India was like, we called something as relaunch your career. And we hired women who had taken a career break of 2 years. And it started from 6 months to 2 years. And that kind of helped us build the leaky pipeline. And when I left India about 12 months ago, we were at late 30s, 37, 38%. It was a great success, a needle point movement that we made, and a great engagement score that kind of came up. So I think there's immense value in participation, immense value in getting to know what are the other companies doing. It also is sometimes self-assuring that what we're doing is also doing the right things in our own space, right? And then also what it really helps us is, one thing that helped me was that I was every award ceremony, I was a mandatory participant to the forum because it helped me connect with a lot of colleagues. So whether it was Airbus, whether it was Accenture, or it was various other companies that I can't remember immediately, but I could connect with them as head of HR to really understand what are their challenges and how they're facing them. So it's just not the report, but also the collaboration forum, the platform that Avtar brings for you to really leverage and build the diversity journey and the success story for the respective organizations. So that's what I'd like to say.
Thank you. Thank you for your kind words, Preeti, and a big congratulations to you I think under your watch leadership, right? I think Mastercard moved from one of the 100 best companies to the top 10 company the last
Yeah,
year. Congratulations to you, Preeti. And I think
thank you.
it's tremendous work, and we are very glad that we are able to contribute that kind of a play that kind of a role to an
That's
organization
right.
really committed and intent. And I think thanks for also sharing the thought that it's also about collaboration, and we hope we'll certainly have a celebration in the Gulf as well. Once we have the study, companies participate, and once we announce the result, we'll have definitely have a celebration. It's a forum where all the companies come together, the best companies come together, and it's just not about celebration. As Preeti mentioned, it is about networking, sharing in terms of what are some of the challenges, how did you overcome some of the challenges. So I think we are going to have a very interesting conference at the end of the study. I think with that we are almost close to calling a day, and I will again once again thank Brinda, Preeti, and Murli for all your insights, for the diverse perspective that you actually gave us. Some very interesting insights in terms of how are you managing your DI challenges and the way the goals that you really set for yourself. And we are hoping that the best company study will actually create more opportunities for us to interact, more opportunities for us to share, learn from each other, benchmark, and therefore we're able to build a truly diverse and inclusive workplace. The Gulf is already diverse. Can it be more inclusive for all? I think that is going to be the focus for us. So thanks once again, Brinda. Thank you, Preeti. Thank you, Murali. Anything that you want to say before we
I'll just
close?
say thanks to Preeti and Brinda as well for sharing their perspectives. A lot of things that we can learn from that. I'm sure it's going to be very useful association.
Thank you, Murali. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you
Thank
all.
Thank
you.
you. Perfect.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much. Thank you so much, each of you, for sharing your experience of creating gender inclusive workplaces across GCC, the best practices, the cultural insights, apart from the challenges and the need to create gender diversity benchmarks. I'm sure the audience here would have taken a lot of valuable insights and to ensure that there are some best practices that can be implemented immediately. Now, for more information on this, please visit our website. I'm also sharing the link for BCWG in the chat window. Thank you for each of you to joining this session today. I'm Molly Grace, and I will meet you soon with another exciting discussion. Thank you so much.